Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's start for today's, and we are going to talk about the probably today is our third time continuously talk about something related to. Hold on. Did you see the presentation or see something else? Let me see. Try one more time. What did you see? Did you see the calendar?
Now I see the calendar.
Okay, great. So one thing I'd like to announce today is we are going to take off for next week and the week after. Okay, so September 17 and the 24th, we are going to take off, and we will restart on October 1st. And Alex will talk about the art and the philosophy of Chinese calligraphy. Okay. Is Alex here?
Yes, I'm here.
You want to talk about your presentation a little bit, or you want to save it?
Yeah, it's I think Chinese calligraphy is not an easy topic to talk about, and a lot of misconceptions. And I just want to share my love for it, and that there's so much to it than just just the look. Yeah. So yeah.
So are you going to cover the Tang Dynasty, Tang Dynasty's writing, calligraphy, like Yan Zhenqin and Liu Gongquan or something?
Because of the constraint of time, so I'm not really going to talk about like the history, how it evolved and everything. I'm probably going to focus more on a few more important works of calligraphy, like Wang Xizhi, right? And then I will probably just jump to the Song Dynasty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so anyway, we will continue, and then after Alex's section, and we will talk about the. I will continue and introduce a novel, okay, which is The Journey to the West. Okay, so don't get confused with these two stories, the Xuanzang story today and October 8th. We are going to talk about Journey to the West, which is a novel in the 16th century. Okay, so much later time, but which talk about Xuanzang. So that's a two separate things, and I just hope nobody got confused with these two stories. So today we were going to do the Xuanzang, and the basics going to introduce the Tang Dynasty. So before we start today, I'm a little bit different because instead of posting a reading, I post a movie. So I know, is anybody want to talk about the movie? Who watched the movie, want to get a few minutes discussion about the movie, so we can talk about the background and the actual story. And then we were going to have some introduction, some discussion on the Buddhism in China. Okay, Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I like the movie. It was pretty similar to a Hollywood movie. Like everybody was really good looking and clean and stuff, and so it didn't. In a lot of ways, it didn't seem very realistic, but it went over a lot of the history. Seemed all accurate as far as I could find, because I paused it multiple times and looked stuff up in Wikipedia, and as far as I could figure out, everything in the movie was accurate. Yeah. And I also like the movie, like when they did place locations, they put the Chinese characters up there. So I was able to find like some of the places and figure out like where he was at and what he was doing and stuff. And I learned that Li is half a kilometer too from that movie. So that was cool. One question I had about his path, at the end of the movie, they showed a map of like his path from Chang'an into, I can't remember what the city in India is, in Bihar province where he studied, but the path was probably twice as far as the direct route through Tibet. And I mean, I know Tibet is really mountainous and stuff, but I'm wondering if there's some other reason other than the difficulty of the terrain that he didn't just go directly through Tibet.
I'm not sure the route, but I know when he come back and the route is a little bit different. I think one of the reason is he promised one of the king of the kingdom, and he is going to he tried to fulfill his promise. That's why he has to change the route when he went back to China. But I'm not very sure, you know. But that's the thing. And but anyway, please tell me. Okay, Dave, please.
Yeah, Jason, to me, yeah, I was wondering about that map as well. And I pulled out my globe I have on top of my desk. And to me, it's like the Great Circle Route, you know, flying, say, from United States to Europe. You go over the North Pole and it's quicker than, you know, going straight across the ocean, which you think is that stupid because it's on the map, it looks farther. But it looked like the route he took, and then, you know, going, was it Kazakhstan or all this other stuff, and then south into India, was probably not much farther. And it, of course, in those days too, like the Silk Road or whatever, I mean, there were established trade routes that, you know, the direct route may not have been established route. Anyway, great movie. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody find this too boring? Because when I watch it, and somebody asked me like, "Oh, do you recommend to watch?" I said, "Oh, no, unless you are interested in this subject, because it's probably a little bit boring, you know." So, Karen.
Yeah, I agree. I found the pacing a little slow.
Yes.
But given his sort of, it kind of fit that pacing movie kind of fit his arduous like 4-year journey there. And then, I mean, I guess the whole journey was like 19 years in total. So you kind of get this feeling of sort of slogging through something in certain parts of the movie that you kind of feel along with him and makes you empathize with the character. But yeah, I think it could have, maybe the pacing could have been a little bit better, but it was so visually stunning that I was willing to give it that. You know, it was just beautiful to look. And I was going to say that I think it's suggested in the movie that he did travel with, you know, Silk Road traders. So that would explain his route quite a bit, I think, right? It follows the Silk Road over,
yes,
and then goes down from there. Yeah.
According to the historical account, Xuanzang is a very good looking guy. Okay, and his father also very good looking. So the movie choose the director actually is quite handsome guy. So I think that's
just for historical accuracy. That's funny.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, actually
Nice.
he has been recording. I think especially his father. There's in the historical account say his father is very handsome and 8 feet tall. So probably.
Wow.
Convert to today, at least it's a quite tall guy, I think. So, so in this sense, it's correct. But I have to agree with you. It's slow, okay, but it's too slow, you know. So probably not suitable for family watch or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
CK, please.
Yeah, it was the second time I watched the movie. The first time was I think shortly after it came out. Okay. And I wasn't in the best state of mind. I actually fell asleep when the first time. So I didn't remember that much of it. The second time was much better because I knew why I was watching it. I found it, well, like most people are saying, is accurate, historically accurate, and it was well made. And I think there is an effort, a great effort being made by the filming crew, at least, to keep to historical accuracy.
Yeah.
I was particularly impressed by the scene where Xuanzang was walking down a street in, I think near Nalanda, where he discovered a lot of injustices, and he said, "How could this happen? This is the land of the Buddha," and whereby an Indian person replied to him that yes, you are in the land of the Buddha, but not all the people are Buddhas. Mm-hmm. So that was quite interesting to me. Like idealism meets reality, and that's the part which I was most impressed in the whole movie, actually.
All right, thank you. So we have Mark and Ella. Then I'm going to move on. Okay. Mark, you have to put your.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention the pacing too. Also struck me as a little bit slow, but I feel like that's because I'm an American who's kind of addicted to, like, I don't know, a shootout every 4 minutes or something, and a series, at least 8 explosions per movie. And so I feel kind of like I'm a violence addict who kind of like needs to come off of it. So I really appreciate the attention to the historical detail and not sticking in a whole bunch of extraneous violent nonsense. They had one little sword fight at the beginning, maybe. But other than that, I really like that. Another thing I noticed is when I was reading on the Wikipedia page about Xuanzang, there was a picture of him from like a Buddhist monastery or something in Japan, and the picture of him had his backpack looked just like the one in the movie. This painting is like a couple 100 years old, and it had like the little lantern thing that was hanging down in front of him. So I'm like, oh wow, man, they must have got that like from that painting of him. So I thought that was pretty cool that even that came out of like some kind of historical reference. So
Yeah,
I didn't mind the pacing. I really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah, other than too slow, probably nothing to complain. And I also noticed if you read the Chinese translation is pretty good. Actually, the Chinese word and the name, they follow the tradition, okay? And then the English name, they also follow the scholastic word. So in this way, I can see, there's a lot of effort put in the historical accuracy and the scholastic correct. So that in this point, it's great, Ella, please.
Yes, I thought it was absolutely beautiful scenery, and the pace was fine, but also not too slow for me. But I also agree that one of the most remarkable points of the movie for me was that same conversation where he's walking along in the city and sees the couple, the young man who had to wear the mask and the young lady that was with him. And one was a beggar and one was, I don't know what, but they were told to walk along the side. And then a man came up and advised him. He told them to walk in the middle. He asked, why don't you walk in the middle? So they were sort of slinking along the side because that's what was expected of them with their status. And that's when he made the statement, what was the statement again? Not all, you're in the land of the Buddha, but not all men are Buddhist.
Yeah, not all people are Buddha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And turn out everybody like it. So But okay. So let's move on. And today I want to do is I like to introduce the basic of the 3 subjects I like to talk. So first, I like to talk about the Tang Dynasty. Since we already finished on the Han Dynasty, and then between Han and the Tang, they have the disunion. The China break up to the south and the north. And right now, the new area is the Tang Dynasty. So I like to cover the Tang Dynasty. Then, of course, we talk about Xuanzang. Then after that, after Xuanzang, the Mahayana Buddhism has been mature in China. So I would like to talk about the Mahayana Buddhism. So that's today's subject for, I will break up into 3 parts. So the first part we were talking about is the history, right? So we have been through this one, and in the spring and the autumn, warring state, that's all the ancient Chinese, so-called the 6 famous school. Then we talk about Han Dynasty, which is Confucianism. And then we talk about 3 kingdoms, and that's the Chinese breakup. So for these 400 years, that's not a disunion, okay, in China. And then we have the north and the south, and the north is more on the Buddhism, and the south is more on the Neo-Taoism. And then today we are going to move to the Tang Dynasty. And Tang Dynasty basics is a dynasty we call the United Nation. The nations are united. Okay, so that's the period of time we are going to talk about. So that's the early Tang Dynasty we are going to cover today. So here, basics, a few, because there's a lot of things to talk about for the this period of time in China. And then we will focus on the philosophy, and today we focus more on Xuanzang and Buddhism. So just to give us some quick overview of the Tang Dynasty. So before Tang, they have the Sui Dynasty, and Sui Dynasty is a very short-living dynasty, only 39 years. Okay, so Sui and the Tang Dynasty basically we call the unification of China, because for the past 400 years, China has been disunion. So the Sui Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty unified China. And so after 300 years, the fall of Han Dynasty. So imperial family, the interesting is the Sui and the Tang family, they are intermarried with the family of nomadic, basically Turkic region, okay, for China's northwest. So they are not pure Han family. And then the Tang and the Song Dynasty has been considered China's golden age. So from now on, most of people will call this period of time as golden age, from the Tang Dynasty and later on Song Dynasty. And the Tang has link east to Japan and Korea. Okay, so that's, and the west to the Silk Road. So basically, the Tang Dynasty, when we talk about China, is no more an isolated state. Basically, to the east, it's connected to export the culture to Korean and Japan. And on the west, also connects with the Europe, that's a later time, and then basic Roman Empire, and to the south with India. So there's a lot of achievement. So basics, I just have to list all this one, and later when we have time, we can introduce. Basics, poetry, calligraphy, landscape painting, philosophy, political thought, historical writing, scientific advance, medicine, chemistry, a lot of improve, and technology, including silk and porcelain and tea, and start to export to outside country. So this period of time really is, we call the golden age. And the basics, the difference, the two peak time of China, one is the Han Dynasty, that's between 200 BC to 200 CE, and the Tang Dynasty, that's another 300 years. So these two periods, Han and the Tang, usually being considered as the peak of Chinese culture. But personally, I would consider Tang is more culturally achievement than Han. Han is more on the hegemony. Okay, so more on the political power, and Tang are more on the culture. That's just my personal view on that. So we can quickly look at the map on the this one. I think we showed this one before on last time, because about this one, this map is on the 350 CE. Basically, you will see here is the Jin Dynasty, and here is the Qin, former Qin. So China has been break up. If you look at the today's China, you will see on the 350, on the south part is Jin, okay, so-called Eastern Jin. And we introduced this one as a Neo-Taoism philosophy. And the Qin, okay, former Qin, if you remember, 2 weeks ago, we talked about Kumarajiva, okay, the monk from Kucha, being captured and travel all the way to this empire and start to do the translation. So that's during that time. And if you look at this map, you will see that I will put this one north and the south. In the south part, basically Eastern Jin, and later on they have the 4 dynasty continuous. So on the south part, basics, the dynasty are continuous, 1 to 1. And in the northern part, they are not governed by the Han people. Basically, they are governed by the nomadic tribes. So they established many kingdoms. So for this 300 to 440, for this 150 years, they have the 16 kingdoms, okay, continuous in this northern land. And then for the 440 to around 600 before Tang Dynasty, they have the 5 kingdoms, and they are not exist at the same time, but basically they have the northern way, western way, eastern way, and then they have the northern Qi and northern Zhou. Okay, so if we want to talk about political in this area, it's very complicated because there's many states, a lot of war going on, but I just give you a quick overview on the, during this period of time. You probably can get a sense during this 300, 400 years, because north and the south are different. In the south is relatively stable, okay, but the north is very unstable. And then in the south, the philosophy, the dominant philosophy is Neo-Taoism. On the north, basics is talking about Buddhism, and the Buddhism is the foreign religion. And then because the minority, or you want to call the nomadic tribes, their religion is Buddhism. So that's why Buddhism start to become popular on the northern part of China. So if you look at the world map, you will see, okay, during this time is very interesting. That's the Tang Dynasty. Okay, the blue one, that's the map. You can go through, that's the Tang Dynasty. And the Weiwu, okay, Weiwu Khanate, okay, that's kind of Turk, or we want to call it pre-Mongolian. So that's another equivalent of powerful kingdom. And the Tibet, okay, that's the Tibetan Empire. Okay, this is a powerful empire, almost the same size or powerful, okay, like the Tang Dynasty. So that's this one. If you look at on the west, that's the time the Umayyad, okay, caliphate, okay, caliphate, right? The Umayyad is during this time. So you look at this map, right? Europe basics is the, well, we'll talk about Europe later, but basically if you look at the global map, you will see the major power is Tang Dynasty and the Umayyad, and they later become the Abbasi, right? And then also a powerful Weiwu and Tibet. Okay, so that's the power around the world during that time. Okay, 750. That's after Xuanzang, but you know, you can see the whole power is moved in this direction. So 1 year later, Umayyad become the Abbasi. So basics I just show in a different map, and then you can see Tibetan Empire grow bigger and bigger, so become a threat to China. So as usual, I will usually compare to what's going on the Europe. But during this time, and actually I really had a hard time to find anybody great to introduce in Europe. So if you look at, that's the Gregory the Great, about 600, okay? And 800 is the Charlemagne, okay? The Carolingian, okay, the family. So during this 600 to 800, I just cannot find any philosopher or any great scholar during this period of time in Europe. So that's really a dark ages in Western Europe. So you will see that in this time, if you look at the cultural philosophy, everything is on the East. It's probably very few things on the West. One more thing is about the Xi'an, or here we will talk about Chang'an. If you look at the map, that's today's map of China, and everybody know the place like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, Shanghai, Hong Kong, all this area. And this area during that period of time is not that important. Basically, the capital is Xi'an, or at that time called Chang'an. And you can see during that time, the capital has been used as a capital since Qin Dynasty, Han Dynasty, and then in the north and the south dynasty in the northern part of China, Xi'an or Chang'an has been considered as capital. And the Tang Dynasty, Xi'an is also the capital, and probably would be equivalent to today or 20th century New York. Basically, that's not just the center of Chinese culture, probably the international center. So we will consider that's one of the most cosmopolitan cities of the time, and serve as the eastern terminal of the Silk Road. The Silk Road is going this way, so it's all the way here. And the trader and the goods from East, West, and the South Asia, as well as a variety of religions coexist in the capital. So it's a very dynamic city. And then at that time, it's a religious freedom until 850. Chinese emperor tried to put a stop, tried to stop the Buddhism. Okay. But during this time, 600 to 750, this 150 years, people in China, or especially in Xi'an, Chang'an, really enjoy the religious freedom. And they call it the three foreign religions, and they all have their own quarters in China, in Xi'an, the capital. So Manichaeans and the Nestorian, that's part of a Christian, being considered heresy, but that's the early Christian in China, and the Zoroastrian also in China during that time. So it's a very dynamic city during that time, and a lot of foreign stay in the capital city, Xi'an. So another thing we can talk about is on the East Asia, because that's the time the culture of China not only received from the West and India and start to mix in China, and then this new culture has started to export it to East Asia. So East Asian cultural sphere developed during the Tang Dynasty, and the influence of Chinese civilization spread throughout East Asia as a neighboring country study and borrowing from Chinese civilization. The Tang Dynasty actually set up the protectorate in northern Vietnam as Annan, the northern part of Vietnam. And Korean, Japan, and northern Vietnam share the Chinese cultural classical. So if you know in the Japan, during this period of time, they start to use Chinese character. So if you know Japanese, right? Japanese have three kinds of writing or mixed use together. The kanji, which is pure Chinese character, and katakana, and that's a partially used Chinese character, and their own development hiragana, right? So the kanji has been used in Japan during this time because of the Tang Dynasty. And the Buddhism also been exported to Korean and Japan, and also Confucianism. Okay. So somebody said even the use of chopsticks has been started to use in Japan and Korea and northern Vietnam. I'm not sure it's correct or not, but that's some, according to some people said that's during the time they learned use chopstick from China. So two important things is Buddhism and the Confucianism, right? Confucianism is the has been long history in China since the Han Dynasty. So it's been 800 years being used, being practiced in China. They start to export to Korean and Japan. And the Buddhism, and what I mean Buddhism probably means the Chinese Buddhism, which is mixed Kumarajabhat's and Xuanzang's translation, and mixed with Chinese culture, and including the Zen Buddhism. They start to export to Japan and Korea. So that's the important part of Tang Dynasty. So here, one thing I talk about is I copy this writing from Colombia, East Asian study, and I find out it's a very good summary about the Buddhism in Tang Dynasty. So I like to share with everyone. So basically, the writing is said many overviews of Chinese Buddhist history are organized by the template of Chinese dynasty. In this perspective, Buddhism began to enter China as a religion of non-Chinese merchant in the later year of Han Dynasty. So here he talking about the nomadic trader, okay, during the later Han Dynasty, which is around 200, the 2nd century. So during that time, the Buddhism has been bring in. But that time, Christian is not there, and Islam, Muhammad hasn't born yet. So Buddhism as the only one foreign religion being bring in. So it was during the following 4th century of this union. Okay, so he's talking about between Han and the Tang. Okay, that's Eastern Jin and South and the North dynasty, including the division between non-Chinese ruler in the north and the native Han government in the south, as well as warfare and the social upheaval. The Buddhism allegedly took root in China. Magic and meditation ostensibly appeal to the barbarian ruler, means the nomadic tribes and in north, and the dominant style of religion pursued by southern were the philosopher. So here he talked about the north is he called the barbarian, or we call it the nomadic tribe. They practice Buddhism. On the southern part, the Han people practice was philosophical. Basis we has been introduced. It's a so-called Neo-Taoism. And during the period of disunion, the 400s between Han and the Tang, the general consensus suggests Buddhism translator wrestled with the problem of conveying Indian ideas in language their Chinese audience could understand. If many false starts, Chinese philosophers were finally able to comprehend common Buddhist terms as well as the complexity of the doctrine of emptiness. So I'm very interested on this writing, on this period, because it's many, I think I probably, or most of people probably underestimate the effort to merge these two ancient cultures. Because unlike other culture, when they receive foreign culture, because the culture is underdeveloped, so it's easy to receive the foreign culture. But during this time, Chinese culture has been highly developed, and the Indian culture, which is Buddhism, also highly developed. So the merge could not be that easy, because I believe a lot of terms are very difficult to understand. As a modern man today, I probably don't see the difficulty, because a lot of words has been used in the daily basis. But I can imagine during that time, when these two highly developed cultures meet together, they must have a lot of false start. Even Kumarajava's translation, Xuanzang had some criticism on him. And I can understand how difficult to introduce Indian idea to Chinese. And we will see later in Xuanzang's translation, you will see how what kind of effort he has made. Okay. So most textbooks treat the Tang Dynasty as the apogee or mature period of Buddhism in China. During the Tang Dynasty, Buddhism was finally synthesized or fully Chinese. The Tang saw unprecedented number of ordination into the rank of Buddhist order and the first new Chinese school of thought and the support for the state. So they Tang before 850, the Tang government, the dynasty, had fully support Buddhism. Okay. So that's the we are talking about here. So that's a brief introduction about the Tang Dynasty, and there's many things. So another thing is the exportation of cultural exportation from Tang to the Eastern Asia. So Eastern Asian cultural sphere developed during the Tang Dynasty. So the influence of the Chinese civilization spread throughout East Asia as a neighboring country, study and borrow from Chinese civilization. So during that time, not only Chinese monk went to West to study Buddhism, and Korean and Japan also start to send scholars to China, okay, to study Chinese culture, and including majorly is Buddhism and Confucianism. So the Tang Dynasty actually set up a protectorate in northern Vietnam. So that's the expansion of territory, and the Korean and Japan share the Chinese culture, Buddhism. I think we talk about this, and then, okay, I think, let me see this one. Okay, so after we finish the Tang Dynasty, let me quickly introduce about the emperor. Okay, the political side. There's also many things to talk about, so I just can just quickly brief the important emperor. Okay, so-called the Taizong, okay, of Tang, Emperor Taizong of Tang. He is as famous as the Wu Di, or Emperor Wu of Han, who is 500, 600 before him. So these two are the most important empire. So that's his quick, brief background. He was born at 598, and his name is Li Shimin, and he is the second son of the founder of Tang, Li Yuan. At 20 years old, when he was 20, Taizong is 20 years old, and his father established the Tang Dynasty. When he was 28, okay, there's a famous incident, so-called the Xuanwu Gate, okay, incident. As a second son, he killed the crown prince, his elder brother, and his younger brother, and their entire family, and forced his father to retire, and then he gained the power. So he became the emperor of the Tang Dynasty, in charge of China. So he get his position, which you call illegally, okay, kill his crown prince and force his father to retire. Okay, so just like the movie said, when he was 28 years old, and he is 2 years, I think he's 2 years older than Xuanzang. Xuanzang start to trip to India, and remember, Xuanzang traveled to India illegally because at that time, Taizong forbid any Chinese citizen go outside, okay, because at that time, human resources, how many people you have are very important. So as an emperor, he doesn't want anybody leave the country, but Xuanzang left. Okay, so we have to remember Xuanzang left illegally. So when he was 47 years old, and Xuanzang already had to travel to India and come back, he pardoned Xuanzang, and Xuanzang, he received Xuanzang in the royal court and set up the translation project at Xuanzang to translate the Buddhism sutra. So you can kind of see this kind of emperor is kill his brothers and family, but he has a full heart to promote culture, to build his culture. And even Xuanzang has been violate the law, and as long as he knows he's doing something for a good purpose, so he received Xuanzang, okay, in the court and fully support his project of translation. At the 630, the Shimin seized the portion of Mongolian, which is Turks, and he earned the title called Heaven Khan. That's an important thing, because remember the map, that time China in the land, the northern part of the Weiwei kingdom is powerful, but he has which you call crusade or war against the northern tribe, and he won, and then they have to respect him as great Khan, as the consider him as in charge of the entire area. So when he was 50, he's dying on his deathbed. He summoned Xuanzang again, and he told him, he said, I regret not having known you earlier. Otherwise, I would have promoted Buddhism. So Tang Dynasty during this time considered Buddhism is an important culture, important religion, and then I think that you can imagine same situation happened on most of empire, right? Before achieve many things and before on his deathbed and start to think about religion. So Emperor Taizong and Wu Di of Han. Okay, so it's Taizong is during this period of time, 6th century, and Wu Di of Han is 140 BC. Okay, they are considered two greatest emperor of Chinese, according to the Chinese Orthodox history. Okay, so these two, if you want to learn the Chinese empire, then these only two emperors you need to remember. So after his death, that's another not that great emperor, so-called Gaozong of Tang. So continue story. So his son became the empire, and he built the great wild goose pagoda, 大雁塔, okay, to store Xuanzang's translation. So Xuanzang is a great scholar during that time. His work on the translation of Buddhism sutra has been as a lot of amount, and he built the place pagoda to store the sutra. So he really put the effort to on the cultural and scholar work. So he also hosted the royal debate between Confucianism and the Buddhism. Okay, so Xuanzang died. Okay, when Xuanzang was 64 years old. Okay, so we remember we talk about his father, Taizong. Okay, and the emperor Gaozong. And you may not know Gaozong of Tang that well, but you probably will know his wife, the most famous Empress Wu. Okay, become the regent. Okay, because he was not healthy, and then he died, and his wife, okay, turned out to terminate the Tang Dynasty and build a new dynasty called Zhou Dynasty. So it's the emperors. There's no emperor, only have the empress Wu. Okay, so I think in another group, a New York group, on September 25th, okay, Sunday, they are going to talk about Emperor Wu, because they have a series talking about powerful women through the history. And in China, has one very powerful woman, probably the Empress Wu. Okay, so during her reign, actually, that's interrupt. So when he I think when he turned 80, and her grandson Xuanzong, okay, Li Longji, restored the Tang Dynasty, kick her out, and didn't kill his grandma. Basically, just kick her out, and then she died. Okay. So that's a short period of time of Empress Wu. And the important thing here is traditional Chinese emperor will call them themselves the son of heaven, Tianzi, right? So when a female become the emperor, okay, empress, it will be called, it cannot call the daughter of the heaven. That is strange. So luckily at that time, Buddhism became popular. So empress claimed she was the reincarnation of Maitreya Bodhisattva. Okay, so instead of calling herself son of heaven, and he became the reincarnation of Maitreya Bodhisattva. So that's the story of this one. And I show this one because if you are familiar with Russian history, and very, very similar situation as the Peter the Great, and then I think his grandson, Peter the Second, and married Catherine, right? And then I think Peter the Second died. I don't know, somebody say killed by his wife, and then Catherine the Great become the emperor of Russia. So similar story, and famously she has many, many lovers, same as Empress Wu in China, also have many, many lovers. Okay, so that's interesting to compare these two great, powerful women in history. So after this, okay, the Tang history continued. Another person called Xuanzang, okay, that's the grandson of the empress, grandson of Empress Wu, okay. He became a powerful, a great empire, but until he has a lot of beauty, very famous beauty, Yang Guifei, okay. So typical situation when an emperor start to fall, okay, people start to blame on the woman, especially the beautiful woman. So she has been blamed. Then they caused the problem called the Andusan rebellion, and that's the decline of the Tang Dynasty. So that's a later story, and we may talk about this later, but the history should end here. So that's the whole background of the Tang Dynasty during this period of time. Before we move on to Xuanzang, the story, and I will stop for a few minutes to discuss about the early Tang Dynasty. If you have any question or anything to share or any concern, yeah, please. CK, please.
Yes, my question is with regard to one of the slides where you mentioned the 3 barbarian religions.
Okay, yeah, San Yi Jiao, right? So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this one.
Okay, when I look at this, it says Manichaeanism, Nestorian, and Zoroastrian, and the translation is Mo Ni Jiao for Manichaeism, Jing Jiao for Nestorianism.
Yeah.
Zoroastrianism, I don't think it's Ming Jiao. I think it's Xian Jiao, I think.
Xian Jiao or Ming Jiao. Ming Jiao is a later time they call it the Ming Jiao, right?
Ming Jiao, I think, is actually Mo Ni Jiao.
Is it Mo Ni Jiao?
Yes. Mo Ni Jiao.
Is a Bai Huo Jiao, Mo Ni Jiao also, right?
Ming Jiao is a transformation from Mo Ni Jiao. It used to be called Shi Cai Shi Mo Jiao, and then later on became Mo Jiao because they want to demonize the religion, and then became Ming Jiao later on. So it's actually Manichaeanism, not Zoroastrian.
So Ming Jiao should be Manichaean. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Alex, please.
Yeah, I have a question because I read a small part that there was a prosecution of the Buddhist. Prosecution of the Buddhist.
Okay. Yes.
Will you get to that or?
The prosecution of the Buddhism, that's on the 850 during the so-called Wuzong. Okay, so that's a much later time. Okay, so during that time, they start to ban most of temple, Buddhism temple, and then they force the Buddhism monk, okay, to stop practice Buddhism. And then you can imagine why it happened, right? So because Buddhism become more and more powerful, and they don't have to pay tax, they don't have to do service for the government, and then Confucianism is kind of I think that's wrong. So that's what happened later.
And did Empress Wu make the Buddhism during Tang Dynasty?
Oh, you mean Empress Wu?
Yeah, Empress Wu.
Yeah.
Did she? Because there's also so many movies and stories about her and her
Yeah.
So it's like did she really make the Buddhism in Tang Dynasty like so much more powerful than more than just a religion in politics?
I don't think she is the person make it, but I think it's during, that's just my feeling. Okay, I think it's during the before the Tang Dynasty, Buddhism already popular in northern part of China. Okay, you will see the nomadic ruler, right? They are not so much Confucianism, and then they are considered as a foreigner, so they are more on the foreign religion. And then if you see Xuanzang's trip, if you watch the movie, right? One question we might ask, right? Oh, who is financial? Who gives him money to do it? How can you try? You need to save a lot of money to go outside for 19 years, right? But technically during this time, I think these people, okay, the non-Chinese people or the northern part of Chinese people, they probably have a habit to when you would respect the monk and finance him. Okay, so I think that's probably the culture during that time. You know. So I'm not sure, you know, the movie, a lot of soap opera are right about emperor who create or promote. So, but basically she's a believer, and she believes she is the reincarnation of Maitreya, right? So that's what I know. So we have CK and the Karen. CK, please.
Yes, I'm looking at this slide of yours, and it says the beauty Yang Guifei.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that most people call this beauty by the name of Yang Guifei, but Guifei is actually not her name.
Right.
Her real name is Yang Yuhuan.
Yang Yuhuan, yeah.
Yeah, Guifei is a title, and in English, English is translated to something akin to esteemed concubine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a royal title instead of a name. So I just want to point this out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly right. Same as Empress Wu, and basically Wu is not her name. Basically, Empress Wu is her last name. Okay, so that's a little bit confused, and then but that's historical. People call these people Yang Guifei and Empress Wu. I think we have another Karen, please.
The emperor who came to power by killing his family members and their families, did people hold that against him? Like, was that considered, or was that just considered the way you became emperor? And
oh no, okay, so that's a great question, and that's an interest part in Tang Dynasty. If we study Chinese history, you will find out the Tang Dynasty has a lot of coup, a lot of violent things. So probably he is the person set the tradition. You know, if somebody did some bad thing and it turned out that he is a tyrant, then we are okay on this. But somebody did a very bad thing and he turned out is a philosopher king, okay?
yeah.
He did everything good. That's nothing bad, except he killed his father and the brother, okay? Everything is perfect. So how are you going to evaluate this kind of person? So that's a big dilemma here. So
that's complicated, people say.
Yeah, he's a wonderful person, and except, okay, unfortunately, his brother, and okay, so that's the big issue. I don't know, and through the history, a lot of people discussing this one, and I think Chinese Confucian scholar kind of forgive this kind of thing, and because he did a great job. So, so I think that's a tough subject. Okay, CK, please.
Yes, on this subject, I have to say that without Li Shimin, there probably wouldn't have been the Tang Dynasty, because he was instrumental. He was the most important, really the creator and the conqueror of lands, rather than his father. His father was the first emperor of the Tang Dynasty, being Li Yuan, in all, well, in name, but it was really Li Shimin who fought the battles and led the armies in suppressing or suppressing the other warlords and uniting the realm. And I guess, I mean, being a little sympathetic to him, he probably had no other choice, because his brothers were about to do the same to him. Yeah. He had to strike first politically, otherwise he would be dead, and there would be no glory of the Tang Dynasty probably without him being the second person in charge. So in some ways, what he did was also very Turkish, because if you look at the history of the Ottoman Turks, there were a lot of examples of royal fratricide, where brothers killed brothers for to become the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. And in Chinese history as well, yes, that's not something that is really alien. So in a system like this, then it's you have to gain power first before you can do anything noteworthy or pacifying the realm or bring about peace to the world. I mean, first you have to save your own skin first. So it's you know, I could very easily forgive it because he lived in the spirit of his times.
All right, thank you. Yeah, but I just like to point out, you know, I also read some scholar discussion about the history because traditionally we talk about Li Shimin is the person who contribute a lot. But they have some scholars said because after he became the empire, he started to rewrite the history. Okay, that's one thing. Of course, that's debatable. I just like to point out. And second thing, most of people probably will find out if you go through the Chinese history, these people, the Tang, the Li family, they are not pure Chinese, right? So CK just mentioned in the Mongolian or the other, they have this kind of the more dynamic kind of action. And the second part that you probably notice, the woman still start to play more important role. Okay, we just talk about Yang Guifei and Empress Wu. They also have other women. Okay, start to play role. So women become more important, more powerful during this period of time. Okay, so they are more outgoing, more involved in the political realm. So that's the Tang Dynasty interested in this part. Yeah, and they are more international, put this way, you know, because they are mixed blood. CK, please.
Yes, I think other than being very militarily powerful, Li Shimin probably couldn't have got away with the title of Heavenly Khan of the Turks if he didn't impress them that he was also in some ways part of them.
Yes.
So you can't imagine Han Wudi being called the Chanyu of the Xiongnu.
Yeah.
Right? So Li Shimin in many ways have mixed ancestry. His family, I think, had Xianbei origins at least, if not Turkish origins. That's debatable because we don't know his DNA. But suddenly he came from a very mixed family. His queen was Changsun, Queen Changsun Huanghou, right? That's his queen.
It's Zangsun, yeah, Zangsun.
Zangsun, yeah, Zangsun, yeah, it's a Xianbei name.
And they, yeah.
So
and his mother is Dugu, right? His mother.
Yes, another Xianbei name.
Yeah.
So his family is at least from that maternal side is from the Xianbei people.
Yeah, they all non-Chinese. Their mother, their wife, you know. So, and I read the what's that? The Sima Guang's 资治通鉴, okay. During the royal court, okay, and they speak Turk. They don't speak Mandarin or any Chinese. They speak Turk. That's their language. So they all, this emperor, they all have their Turk name. Okay, so the family they call they use their Turk name. Okay, so that's the interesting part, you know, because they are very non-Chinese, non-traditional Chinese.
But strangely, I find later generations of Chinese tend to consider the Tang the most Chinese of dynasties, you know, especially the overseas Chinese. They like to call themselves
Chinatown, we call it the Tang People's Street, right?
Yeah, and the most Chinese of dynasties is actually the most non-Chinese of dynasties.
That's true. And actually, people like me in Taiwan, I'm the pure Chinese, put this way, because my ancestor escaped from the northern part to the south. Remember the split? So we go to the south. And then when they have more wars, and we go further south, and they have more, we go south again. So I talk about my ancestor. Basically, they keep escaping when you have a foreign invading, keep escaping and all the way to Taiwan. So in this sense, Taiwanese are most Chinese. So that's the interest part. So Mark, please.
Yeah, Jason, thank you. I found your comment about the status of women in the Tang really interesting. And I was wondering, were you saying that the Tang women had more power because the Tang dynasty had like barbarian roots or like roots outside of China? Because I know that's a common pattern, like in Europe and various places, that nomadic or barbarian people, women often have a higher status than in those more settled civilizations. So I'm not sure if that's what you were saying, or were you saying?
Well, I would say culturally a little bit different, right? Chinese traditional, because during this time, 6th century, 7th century, Confucian has been developed very well in China. Okay, so women are more being set in a certain rule and not get involved in the political power. But since their family are, the royal family are linked with nomadic tribes. So I think, for example, you can just CK and I discuss, right? The situation like the Tang Taizong Li Shining, his wife is Zang Xuan, that's a Xianbei, another tribe's family. And then his prime minister, okay, also has is foreign. And then you will see they also employ a lot of foreigners, okay, the so-called foreigner, as a general, like this guy, An Lu San, okay. An is the last name, An is the, I forget which one, another tribe name, okay, from the West. So the culture is very different during that time, okay, especially on the royal family.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, please.
I was wondering if they were of mixed blood because of, were the marriages mostly for alliances, like in Europe? In Europe, the royal families are all
the same.
Like there's a joke that Kaiser made when the British royal family changed their name from Saxe-Coburg to Windsor, that he went to see the Merry Wives of Windsor, and he said, "I just really enjoyed the Merry Wives of Saxe-Coburg." So yeah, well, was it alliances?
I think you can imagine this way, right? During the disunion time, okay, the northern part, okay. So if you think about at that time, the political is this way, but the central government is weak. So you have the general, okay. Let's assume the general is a Han people. You send the general to guard your border, to defend your territory with the foreigner, okay. So and then this general has superpower. They hand over their power to their son, so they have their own kingdom. So the best way to protect their area is intermarriage with the tribe. So their father's side always keep the Han last name, like Li, okay, or okay, and then their wife and their daughter-in-law, their granddaughter-in-law are all foreigner. So I think that would be the easiest way, to do your own job. So that's my idea, actually. Okay, so thank you very much. And then we will have a chance to talk about Tang, because I just quickly introduce as a background for Xuanzang. So I hope most of the people watch the movie, so we don't have to go too many details on the Xuanzang, and we will have more discussion on the Xuanzang on this one. And the basics, this one, probably we just follow the movie, the historical account. Okay, I'd like to ask a question, okay. Those who watch the movie, do you pay attention when they talk about Xuanzang, talk about he was a baby, and the scene show the baby's foot? I don't know, anybody pay attention on that? The movie, the screen, they show baby's foot, and I pay specially attention on that. And I don't know, anybody pay attention on this? No, that's a test question. So why it show this the baby's foot? Okay, Dave, please. Oh, I think that. Oh, hold on. I have.
You got to get Dave from Tacoma.
Okay, I just hold on, let me mute. Let me take care of this.
Oh, no, you unmuted again.
Okay, let me mute it. Okay. Okay, so is that David? Dave?
Dave, yeah, you might have to kick him out.
But Dave is a good person. How come become like this? So I have to remove. Is that the real David?
Dave dash
David
Tacoma, I think.
I know him.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay, I just too bad. Okay. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, so just give quick answer. The movie director shoots the baby's foot. Okay, and I don't know. You probably not pay attention. The baby has 10 toes. Okay, that's correct. Okay, because I'm going to introduce on the October 8th. That's the Journey to the West. That's the novel, which talk about the Xuanzang only have 9 toes because one toe is been bitten off by his mother. So I think that's the reason the movie showed the baby's foot has 10 toes. Okay, so probably nobody pay attention on that except me. So we will talk about the Journey to the West on October 8th. So that's just for the, because this one is totally unrelated to Journey to the West as a novel, but this one is historical correct. So Xuanzang was born as a Chen Wei or Chen Yi, okay, the Chen family. His father, just like we discussed at the beginning, is a very handsome man and is working for the government, not high ranking. And then his mother died when he was 5 years old, and then his father retired and fully educate Xuanzang. At that time, he called Chen Yi. Okay, he's teaching the Confucian classic and filial piety, the classic of filial piety. That's Xiaojing. That's a very important Confucius text. So when he was 10 years old, his father died, and the Xuanzang stayed in the temple with his older brother, so monk Changjie, because his older brother was a monk. Okay, so he joined his older brother. When he was 13, he became the ordained monk. And when he was 19, Tang Dynasty established. Remember, when he was born, that time was Sui Dynasty. Okay, so Xuanzang was qualified of the Bichu. Bichu is like kind of become a master. Okay, so you have to qualify some standard. So Xuanzang prepared for his trip when he was 28 years old. Okay, because during that time he studied the Yogacara. Okay, Yogacara is a new teaching of Buddhism in the different than the Kumarajava's translation. So so I believe Xuanzang must be a very curious person. So he wanted to go to India, the source, to learn and to know, find the situation. So when Zhang was 28 years old, he left the border of Tang. Remember, Tang Empire during that time has a huge boundary. So even he traveled, if you watch the movie, he traveled to the West. He already spent, I don't know how long, probably almost a year, still in the Tang Dynasty, because Tang Dynasty border is huge. Okay, so he has to leave illegally. So Xuanzang traveled toward, and in the movie we saw he met a person called Vendak Sipantuo. Okay, so we will talk about this later. Okay, and Xuanzang passed through the desert, so that's a lot of work he has to pass through. And he stayed in the Gaochang, that's a kingdom, and the Kucha. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. That's the birthplace of Kumarajava. Okay, he stayed there for 2 months because all these kingdom are all Buddhism kingdom. So when he showed up as a monk, Buddhism monk, he got the respect. That's how he got the finance and got the support, can travel to India, because all these kingdom are Buddhism kingdom. So when they see a monk come and then show their decency and show their capability in understanding Buddhism teaching, they got respect. So most of the kingdom, the king, were willing to support, finance, help, guide for the Xuanzang to travel to India. And when he arrived in India, he entered from north, right? 30 years old, he entered India. He stayed there for 14 years. And then he stayed in the most important, he studied in Nalanda University and studied with Siddhabhadra. That's the most, how to call it, the head of Nalanda. Okay. So the interesting part here, he's not only studied Buddhism teaching, he also studied Yogacara, and Yogacara is the Buddhism, logic, linguistic, medicine, arithmetic, Brahmana. Okay, so if you look at this one, that's a lot of things is non-exist in China. Okay, China has good medicine during the Tang Dynasty. Okay, but you can imagine that Indian medicine will be very different than Chinese medicine, which Chinese medicine is based on the 5 elements and the yin and the yang. Okay, so he studied a different kind of medicine, arithmetic, and you will know India is very good in math, all right, and good in logic, linguistic. Okay, so all these kind of, especially logic, linguistic, and arithmetic, in China basically is non-exist. So Xuanzang, when he also studied this one, and today we call the Chinese name this kind of thing, the logic, arithmetic, and especially linguistic. We all translated this name from Japan, but in Xuanzang's time, he called this one Yinming, Sengming, and Su. Okay, so yeah, actually he has his own name. So okay, and then not only he studied in Nalanda school, he also spent 3 years to travel to the South India, and he also visited different places. And I think in the movie you probably show, and then I don't know much about Indian, so I just have to list all this one. Then when he come back in his trip, he has a lecture in Nalanda. And then he also lectured in the Eastern India. And the last year he stayed in India. Okay, so again, all this written is by the biography written by his disciple. So we don't know how true it is. He's the only one, Xuanzang is the only one tell this story to his disciple. And there's no evidence in India. And then we talked about this before, because Indian is not good at keep all the records, correct the day and the name. So all the information are lost. So that's the only source. But I just summarize some of the important things. He sounds like he has a great debate in the city called Kanyakumbi. Okay, Kanyakumbi is I know this story, they call Chinese called Qu Nu Cheng. That means the women are crooked, okay? Because there's some funny story about one man, he want to marry the princess. One king has 100 daughters, and he want to marry one of the princess. And then the king just give him the very ugly princess. The 99 princesses are beautiful. Only one is ugly. So he just can marry the ugly one. So he just cursed the other 99 princes become crooked. So turn out this city has a lot of women like this way. That's why I call this name. So that's a side story. So during that story in the city, he has a great debate with Mahayana and the Theravada Buddhism. Okay, so sounds like Xuanzang is pretty good in Sanskrit as a foreign language, and he's a good debater, and he being very well respected even in India. Okay, so he attended 75 days long Indian, they called All Indian Alms Giving Gathering. Okay, this happened every 5 years. He attend there. That's a great gathering, and during that time, India is a Buddhism country. Okay, and he also lectured for 2 months. Then he crossed the Sindhu River, but he lost the sutra and lost the elephant in the movie. And then he had to send the people back to the city and to recopy the lost sutra and then come back. So then he spent, I think he only need 2 years to go back to China. At that time, China is very powerful empire. So when he cross the border, all the people know. And remember, not like the movie, he traveled alone. Actually, it's a big team, okay, not just like one person. Okay, so if you see that, he left India after staying for 14 years, and he returned to China. And then with 675 Sanskrit texts, and he carried a lot of things, and he did a lot of translation. I think the important writing is the Great Tang record of the Western region. Okay, we are going to read some of this. And he important, the Emperor Taizong also asked Xuanzang to translate the Dao De Jing, Taoist writing, to Sanskrit, and sent people sent back to India. So kind of like a return. But it looks like no Indians are not interested in the Dao De Jing because there's no record about anybody study Dao De Jing, okay, during that time. So since either the people not deliver it, or Indians are totally not interested on this kind of philosophy. Two important writing. One is this one, so-called the Yogacara Bhumi Sastra, okay, 100 fascicles, okay, it's a lot of writing. And the translation called the Treatise on the Foundation for Yoga Practitioners. I'm going to talk about this one a little bit on the philosophy side. And then when he was 50, Taizong died. And another important translation is this one, Vajnapi Machata Siddhi, okay, the establishment of state of consciousness only. So, okay, and then, so that's another translation. You can see the size of translation is huge, okay. So another, I think the movie, most of the story are based on this, the great biography of Xuan Temple Tripitaka, okay. So that's his title being called, instead of calling Xuanzang in the Buddhism world, we call him Tripitaka, and the Tripitaka become his name, okay. But actually, Tripitaka is, Tripitaka is supposed to be the title for a Buddhism monk or Buddhism scholar. If you become master on Sutra, on Vinaya, on Abhibuddha, which means you are master in teaching. Sutra means the teaching of Buddha, the words of Buddhism teaching. And Vinaya means the rule and the procedure, the precept. And Abhidhamma means the scholastic discussion. So if you are familiar with these three, you can be called Tripitaka. Just like today, we call you, if you achieve something, you will call yourself PhD. Okay, when you put your name card, you will put a PhD. But during that time, if you achieve these three areas, you will be called Tripitaka. And Tripitaka, translation is three baskets. Okay, but after Xuanzang, when people talk about Tripitaka, we talk about Xuanzang. So that's the name become reserved for him. So a few things we need to talk about is the Nalanda School, Nalanda University, which is the first international residential university. It operated from 400 to about the 12th century. And according to Xuanzang record, and in the movie you probably see, they have 1,500 faculty and 10,000 students, monk. They include the secular, lay people and the monk. But the complex discovered today is the size about 14 hectares. That's about 35 acres. Some scholars debate it's not possible to host 10,000 students, okay? Because UCLA is has I think 30,000 students, and they have 400 acres. So 35 acres probably cannot hold support so many students. But anyway, that's a big university. And then it's really international. During the peak, the university attract scholars and students from China, Greek, and Persia. And Nalanda was sacked by Turkic Muslim, okay, in 1993. And the one important thing is Xuanzang is not only Chinese visit there. Okay, the famous people before him is Faxian. Okay, so at the 5th century before Xuanzang, he already visited and spent. I think he stayed 5 years. And after Xuanzang, you can see not far away at Xuanzang Yijing. Okay, and he also traveled to Nalanda school, but he's not from the land. He going from the seafair. Okay, doing from the travel over the sea. Karen, please.
Just very briefly, I was really happy when I saw that in the movie, because in June I saw a little BBC piece about Nalanda University, because in 2010 they decided to build another one. So I can put that link in the chat. But yeah, they're bringing it back.
Yeah. But that's a different location, I believe.
Well, just a few miles away.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not building on the ruins because they're they're valuable, I guess, but not too far away. And they've already starting to give out graduate degrees. So I can put a link in the chat to the BBC story. But it was bringing it back after how many thousands of years.
Yeah, that's a. If you search for Nalanda University, you go to the real university, not this one. Yeah. CK, you have hands up. CK, please.
Yes, I'm wondering about the size. 10,000 student marks at Nalanda. Is that all at once, or is it over several years?
No, it's all at once. All at once. That's what I talk about.
All at once. Okay.
Yeah, so,
I have a theory which may go some way to explain why probably 10,000 may be possible. If you look at UCLA, students over there probably live in luxurious student accommodation by the standards of the time.
I also think the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, but these students are probably living in very austere circumstances. If you can pack like 6, maybe 10 students into a room.
Yeah, it's easier, right, for the 10 monks to stay in the one student room, right?
Yes.
And they don't eat a lot, right? Compared to Americans, they don't eat a lot. So.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so that's probably true, right? So, but I don't know, but I just present what I received, okay, for you. Kevin, please.
Yeah, my question: what's the motivation for the Xuanzang to visit, and learn from Nalanda in India, and what's like? He seems to know something beforehand. Thank you.
I think what I don't know, what's his motivation, but I believe he's a very curious person because he studied Yogacara. That's the new Buddhism teaching, and he find out the translation is very confusing, and he want to know the truth. And that time there's no Harvard, no Yale, no Oxford, and the Nalanda probably the one actually during that time is the only university.
And he want to find the truth.
You want to find the truth. And then you can see he's a quite curious person. He's not go there, get a PhD and then go back, right? He go there and then he spend time to travel around, go to different cities all around the India. He probably travel more than most of the Indian during that time. So he probably know more Indian than the Indian during that time. So I believe, and he not only study Buddhism teaching, he studied logic, linguistic, medicine, everything, including Burman, the Hinduism teaching, the Vedas, right? So I just would say he's a curious person. Okay, let's move on. So, okay, so I think you remember this scene, right? Okay, I think they beautified, but anyway, but I believe it's true, basically according to some information I read. Okay, so in the Nalanda, the abbot is, his name is Siddhabhadra. Okay, I don't know it's a Siddhabhadra. Okay, yeah, that's the historical account about Siddhabhadra. He is the master of Yogacara teaching, and he stayed there when Xuanzang visit, and he already 102 years old. And the story said, I don't know in the movie or not, he was very sick, but he dreamed of the which one? The Bodhisattva tell him they have the monk from China going to visit him, ask him to teach the monk. So he just become well. And then when he sees Xuanzang, he just start to teach him because he keep alive. The only purpose is to teach Xuanzang, so Xuanzang can spread the Buddhism teaching to China. Okay, so that's the that's the story. Okay. So his main idea, I mean Siddhabhadra. Okay, Siddhabhadra's main ideas teaching is about the three turning of the Dharma wheel. If you familiar with the Tibetan Buddhism, and they are very focused on the three turnings of Dharma wheels. This teaching is originally from Buddha, okay, the Gautama Buddha. Okay, so he taught. I think we all know, right? He taught the Four Noble Truths, right? That's all. For doesn't matter which school you are, we all have a Four Noble Truths, which is suffering, cause, cessation, and the past. So they have the three turning. Okay, so first turn you have to understand the suffering, understand the cause, understand the cessation, understand the past. Then second turning is you have to learn how to avoid the suffering, how to stop the cause, reach the nirvana, and practice the Eight Noble Truths, Eight Noble Paths, right? And the third turning, you have to prove, okay, the suffering is empty, the causation is non-existent, cessation is not there, and there's no noble truths, no Eight Noble Truths, no Eight Noble Paths. Okay, so that's the three turn, totally is 12. That's the original Buddha's teaching. But again, just like Trinity in Christian, right? Different school with different idea of Trinity. So same thing, different school in Buddhism will have different explanation of three turning of Dharma wheel. So Siddhabhadra has his own teaching on that. We will talk about this one later. Okay. So let's make a quick summary on the Xuanzang's travel. So totally he spends 17 years. Somebody said 19 or 20 years, depending on how you count. He visit travel 50,000 or 25, 26 miles and visit over 100 states. And the Tripitaka become his title. And the Xuanzang said that they have brought back 520 cases and translate 1,300. So that's he did a lot of things. And I think we talk about this. And that's the map. Okay, we talk about, and somebody thought, I think that's the same as in the movie. You probably see the map, right? So that's kind of read what's the most famous book he wrote is this one, the so-called the Great Tang Record of Western region. Just don't confuse with the Journey to the West. Okay, so we will talk about this one later. That's totally different, but just borrow the name. So this reading is quite boring. Okay, basically it's just a National Geography without picture. Okay, let's put it this way. So I think we read this one before when we talk about Kumarajima, the Kucha kingdom, right? He talk about the soil is suitable for rice and grain. That's his writing, and I just find the Chinese part on that. So I remember that time that CK asked about the talk about the style of writing is in Indian, and the CK asked how does he call Indian? Surprisingly, I find out Xuanzang is already called Indian as Indu in today's name. So it's to my surprise, you know. So I just show here on for the original text. Yeah. And then after he just organized with country after country. Okay, so it's really just National Geographic without picture. So after Kucha, he talked about the country called the Baluka. Okay, that's the Kum in today's Xinjiang, Ashka city, I think, Aksu city, Aksu. Okay, so that's his writing. He's talking about the kingdom of Baluka is 600 li from east to west. And now amazing, he remembered this. So he didn't keep the record and he just write down. So I'm not sure how accurate on this one, but according to some scholarly research, they say are very correct. So he must have a great memory. He talk about the language is different, and they produce fine sort of cotton. And they talk about the neighboring country. I think I highlighted some interest. Okay, he talk about they have frequently fear-stricken, impeded, and molested traveler with their influence. So he talk about they have 暴龙, they have the fear-stricken, okay, and the traveler have to avoid wear red and avoid carrying loud sounding calabashes. Okay, you should not make noise, otherwise it will cause the sandstorm, I think, and then people will die or see this. So I think that's a lot of legend or hearsay. Okay, but anyway, that's his writing. Country by country, have 100 and I think it's 130 country, and they're all in this kind of style. So this one actually provide a very useful information for the Tang Dynasty when they're dealing with Western side, okay, because that's one of the Xuanzang contribution. So I will stop Xuanzang before I move on to Mahayana, and then that's the story of Xuanzang. Is anyone want to discuss about Xuanzang? And one thing I was thinking about why Xuanzang is so special, right? Because we have Fa Xian, we have Yi Jing, and before him there are many people doing translation, Kumarajava. Okay, so why Xuanzang is so special? You know, probably one of the reasons is the novel, the Journey to the West. But is there anything else? And how do you think about Xuanzang? Let's have a few minutes to discuss. So if you have something to talk about this. No? Everybody watch the movie, so fine. Yeah. Okay, Ella, please. Ella?
Okay.
What's the name of the movie again?
The movie is Xuanzang.
Just Xuanzang.
Yeah. I posted in the meetup page.
Okay.
It's in YouTube. It's free. You know, so. Also, you didn't watch the movie, but you can watch the movie after you join this meetup. You can watch the movie. So they have they speak English with Chinese subtitle, so you know it should be okay for you. So, Ella, you have something to talk?
Yes, Jason. My thoughts on why
Xuanzang.
Say that one more time for me, please.
Xuanzang.
Xuanzang.
Or you want to call me Tripitaka. So.
Why Xuanzang is so special, as portrayed in the movie, which we have discussed is pretty true to the facts, would be that he takes a journey that not everyone takes to, as we have discussed, to find the truth. And I think it also is very courageous. And I think he's humble. And and he's very caring. So I think he has a lot of the characteristics that, you know, being brave and courageous and humble, that would be special in anyone. And I think a lot of stories are written with this particular theme. And also, I think Jesus was portrayed as having a lot of those very similar qualities, being humble, being brave, and searching for the truth, along with a few others.
All right, thank you, Vera. Karen, please.
Yeah, I also think he's important because of the translations, right? I mean, there have been some really pivotal moments in intellectual history where you have these large-scale translation movements, like in history of Islamic philosophy, and the return of that material back to the West and the translations in Spain. And yeah, I think that just leaves a legacy when you bring that, when you make that cross-cultural connection with those significant documents.
All right, thank you, Karen. Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I apologize. Did my computer blow up? What happened when I tried before?
Okay, so I because I sorry, I probably kick you out because there's a lot of noise.
No problem. Did you have a feedback loop or something, or?
No, but right now it's fine. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, the comment I wanted to make is you were talking about the monk, and I'm sorry, trouble his name. Anyway, being floated in a basket by his mother to get into the monastery, whatever.
Yeah. That's the novel, not the true story. So.
Yeah, a myth. But
Yeah.
I just draw the parallel to Moses in the Bible was floated in a basket in a river and picked up by the royal family. And of course, the other thing between Buddhists and Christianity is what the Buddha was brought up in a walled garden by his rich family to protect him, and kind of a parallel with the Garden of Eden in the Bible. So I just tried to bring it up, but I'm sorry if something went wrong. I've been having computer trouble today. But
okay, no problem. Yeah, because I hesitate to remove you because I know you are a real person. So.
Yeah, I try anyway.
Okay, anyway, and I hope you join on the section we talk about the novel, because if you know the story of he being thrown to the water by his mother, you must know the other story. Okay, and that's
yeah, I know
equally interesting. In
I know
the real
you
story.
said it was really his brother took him there, but yeah, we just had one of those stories. But anyway, I really wanted to hear all the story, Dave. Thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you. Kevin, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure you mentioned that. Actually, it's one of four classic book novels in China. One story, to Journey to the West, is based on Xuanzang.
Yeah,
right?
It's based on Xuanzang, but probably only have 1% truth.
Yeah, but you see how that's influenced why that's based that. It's mainly in fact everybody knows as a Chinese history, everybody knows about this person and what he done. And the beautiful thing is how culture influence each other. Basically, how Chinese early in the Tang Dynasty, they learn send the person to Indian. By the way, Xuanzang is hard to pronounce. We call the Tangzang. You can start that as Tang, 10 monk. You can call. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. If it different pronounce the proper name, probably should call the Tripikata, right? Sanzang, right? So that's another way, in also correct in Chinese name. When in Chinese we say Sanzang, that means the Tripikata, and actually that's the title. Okay, so we have CK and Alex, please.
Just a quick question. Does that during that time, did the places you visit such as the school and the Indian history back then, did they have any mention of Xuanzang? And what is their view about him? Just if not, it's okay.
I don't know, okay, but here I don't know who has a better understanding of India. I don't want to insult anybody, but according to my understanding is Indian. I think we talk about Indian history, right? They call it the Hitiasa, right? Which is a lot of story because they talk about the eternal truth. So technically there's no day, no time, and that's eternal truth. And a way to understand the Indian history probably more like Bible story, right? So that's all eternal truth, but there's no correct record. So
there's no mention of Xuanzang like in there.
I think so, but probably not much. Okay, probably
Okay.
not. Because, you know, the situation is what I heard, of course, it could be biased. A lot of Indian scholars based on Xuanzang's description to understand their past, because Indian doesn't have a good scientific westernized record of their history. That's why a lot of historical account they have to base on, and the Xuanzang's source become the only one source for this information. So that's why I post this one, why Xuanzang is so special, because he write down all these kind of things, which nobody else write, okay, during that time. So that become the only source to understand what's going on during that time in that area. Not only Indian, also the Kucha or the Balukas, you know, all these kind of kingdoms. Yeah. Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I want to support something you just said and then ask you a question. So when I first started studying philosophy, I commonly ran across this thing like Bertrand Russell declares in his History of Western Philosophy that the Greeks invented philosophy. And I knew that was bogus. And I did a lot of research on Wikipedia of ancient philosophers. And I made like a classified probably a couple hundred of them, mostly Chinese, Indian, and Greek and Persian. And one of the things that was really interesting is that in Wikipedia, like the Mediterranean philosophers and the Chinese philosophers all have really good dates, really specific dates. But the Indian philosophers are like it's like sometime between these 3 centuries or these 4 centuries. Like the dates are inaccurate to hundreds of years. Whereas with the Chinese or the Greeks, there's maybe like a couple year discrepancy. They'll say like, oh, he was born in 52 or 53 BC or something like that. So I really encountered that really strongly. It was really important in my research because I was trying to establish the relationship between Indian and Greek philosophy because a lot of the ideas are very similar. And the dates for the Indian philosophers who have the similar ideas with the Greeks are usually earlier, but the Indian dates are also super imprecise. So it's hard to take them, it's hard to be very confident about what the actual Indian dates are. So it's interesting to hear you make the same observation. And I'm wondering, you kind of commented on this a little bit. I've always wondered why that is. Why are the Indian dates so mushy, whereas the Chinese and the Greek dates are so specific? And it sounds like you think that there's maybe like a, not so much like a cultural, political reason for it, but like an ideological reason, like about the way that time is perceived or something. Or I'm just wondering if you would expand a little bit more generally on why the Indian dates are so imprecise.
Yeah, I have this discussion with the CK, not CK, the SK, okay, Sashi, and with other people with Indian background. Basically, that's my of course, that's just my conclusion, okay? So they write in, the Indian are different than Chinese. Chinese historical started in Confucius time, which is 550 BC, okay? They already have a government position as keep record on everything, okay? Even Confucius is not accurate for, in my opinion, in his spring and autumn, each year he just write, which year, spring, which year, autumn, okay? It's very rough, but at least they have the 2 times during the same year, okay? Indian has a different concept because they are thinking about the the truth. When you write down something, you write down something truth, and truth should be timeless. So why you bother talking about the time that, because I'm talking about truth. 1 + 1 = 2. I don't have to tell you that's during this time or happen in California or in New York. It doesn't matter. So they are whatever words to write down. It's eternal truth. Okay. So if you think about Bible, okay. So talk about, I think it's the most confusing prophet, Isaiah. Okay. When he have a prophet, right? He's not talking about past, talk about future, even predict the future. But when you read it, you don't know what he is talking about. Okay. So if you look at the Old Testament writing, another thing probably similar to this. They talking about sins, but like a book of Job, we don't know what time. Has no reference. Okay, on what happened other than the family of Job. Okay, so I think that's the idea. That's just my observation. CK, please.
Well, my preliminary views on why Xuanzang is so special is because of his translations that laid the foundation of, I think, to some extent, Chinese Buddhism, in the way he translated the original text into Chinese, and the words, the translated words, the concepts that he used, which I think is still used in modern Chinese. And secondly, I think the length of his stay abroad outside of the Tang Empire is also important. I think he stayed, like you said, about 17 years. That's a very, very long time. And he went through a lot of travails to get to Nalanda in India, and he traveled around India. So he spent a substantial amount of his life abroad and recorded them in that 大唐西域记. So that's another reason he was a famous traveler, and he didn't only travel, he recorded his travels. So that gave us a lot of information on the world, that part of the world during that time. And well, for example, there's his records of the, as far as I can remember, the kingdom of Gaochang, right, where he stayed. Gaochang apparently was a kingdom or empire established by Han people in the what they call Xiyu, Western regions, and then this kingdom was conquered and eventually made a prefecture of the Tang Dynasty under the reign of Emperor Taizong Li Shimin. So without Xuanzang, we probably wouldn't know that much about Gaochang before the Tang Dynasty caused its demise. So I mean, and in some ways, his travels is like an odyssey, like in the Greek way, although we can't make the same comparison. But Odysseus, went around and experienced a lot of hardships and adventures before finally regaining his throne. So in some ways, Xuanzang was victorious in that sense on his return after spending many years abroad.
Thank you. Thank you for this information. And the basics, I think that I have to agree with you. Xuanzang special because of political achievement, right? Just like your example, Gaochang. If not Xuanzang, Tang Taizong may not be able to know there's something over there, and they also help him achieve something. So even he illegally go out of the country, but Tang Taizong is welcome him back, and they fully use his technology, his knowledge, right? So that in this sense, he's very special. He great contribution in the point of view of the Tang Empire, put this way. That's why, just like Kevin said, a lot of people will call him Tang Seng, right? They put the title of Tang to him, and that's one of the reasons. Okay, so anything anybody want to talk about? I see Mira has hands up and you have hands off. I don't know. You still want to talk?
You can hear me?
Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I don't know how special he is, because I have my bias. I prefer Kumarajiva's translation. But I think it has to do with luck, of course. I mean, he was born in Tang Dynasty. If it was, what's his name? Fa
Xian.
Fa Xian was born in Han Dynasty.
No, Fa Xian is in the Northern Dynasty. I don't know which one, right? Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, Xuanzang became very famous in India, and then when he went back to Xi'an, he was received by the what's his name? Tang Taizong, who was so ready to make a change in the society to promote culture. So yeah, I mean, that's you always need some luck. And he was able to have disciples, had the opportunity to translate many works, and some of a lot of it was spread to Japan, Korea, Eastern Asia. So that, that's his fame.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mira. Yeah, I think that's great information. Actually, Fa Xian is not, well, one of the reasons is Xuanzang was in the Tang Dynasty. That's in the peak of the powerful empire. That's also helped. And then I kind of agree with you because about the translation, and Kumarajiva translation actually is more popular. When we read the Diamond Sutra, when we read the Lotus Sutra, they are all Kumarajiva's translation. They have the Xuanzang's translation exist, but Xuanzang's translation is less popular. And technically, we will say, well, Kumarajiva's translation is better because the technique they use is different. Because Kumarajiva basically understand everything and then write down in Chinese. So his example is he tried to feed somebody, so he take the food, chew it, and spit out and give to somebody. A little bit disgusting, but it's easy to absorb. Okay, so that's Kumarajiva translation. And Xuanzang's translation is more like word by word. Okay, so technically correct, but not that easy to understand. Except today we read the Heart Sutra is Xuanzang's translation. Okay, so for the person who, okay, we'll talk about this later. So, okay, so I think time is up today, and I have other part to talk, but I think I will do it for the next section or the next time. And because another part is related after Xuanzang, the Buddhism in China, okay, the Chinese Buddhism. So I probably will make this in another section. And I just like to let everyone know we are going to take off for 2 weeks. So next week we have no meeting, and then for the 2 weeks we have no meeting, and then and October 1st, Alex is going to talk about the Chinese calligraphy. And then October 8th, I will talk about either the Chinese Buddhism or I will talk about the novel, the Journey to the West. Okay, so that's the schedule, and then I will take the 2 weeks off for next week, and September 16th and the 24th, we will have no meeting, and then on the October 1st, Alex will going to talk about the Chinese calligraphy, and I already put the notes here, and then so we shall end the meeting in a few minutes, and then anything you want to discuss, I will stay here for another 2 minutes if you want to discuss, something. Any last comment?